The occasional slapping turned into the occasional punch. It finally came to a head when my father came home one night and gave me an ultimatum.
Okay, enough is enough. Chad, you are either going to contribute to this family, or you will no longer be welcome in this house.
What do you mean, Dad?
I need a car, so you have two choices. You can either go out and steal one for me, or you can go out and live on the street and never return. If you return here without a car, then I'll kill you. Do you understand me?
Hi there, my name is Chad, and I have a really great story to tell you. It didn't start off great though, but I promise you that it has a happy ending. To start with, let me just say that my parents are just about the worst people you can imagine. There are probably worse people out there in the world, but I had the misfortune of being born into their family. I was the youngest of 3 children. My older brother Jack and older sister Deborah were just like my parents. Growing up, literally everyone in the family would pick on me. When I was only 6, I learned to never ask my family for anything. Hey Dad, can we get a dog?
A dog? What makes you think that I would buy you a dog? I don't even want to pay for your food. Why would I pay for a dog's food as well?
What an absolute idiot. With what money are you going to pay for it?
Money? I don't have any money. I thought maybe Mom and Dad would pay for it.
You selfish little brat. I really wish your mother hadn't given birth to you.
My father then smacked the back of my head hard enough that it made me fall over. For a few seconds I saw stars, while Deborah just stood there and laughed at me. Once I regained my senses, she then sucker punched me in the stomach and began laughing again before walking away. I was so confused, but I knew from a young age that my family was cruel, and for no better reason than because they thought it was fun. On top of that, both my parents constantly would break the law, but never anything that would get them into a lot of trouble. For instance, my mother would regularly shoplift. She would even have my brother and sister act as a distraction so that people wouldn't notice her put things into her purse. Sometimes it would be stuff we would need, but not always. As for my dad, he would sometimes go into crowded areas and would pickpocket, sometimes making hundreds of dollars in a couple hours. He would often bring my brother and sister with him as well, when he did for the same reason as my mother. The two would make a scene, and people would stare at them, not knowing that they were being robbed while they were looking at my siblings.
Why doesn't Chad ever come and help us when we go out, Dad?
That's because he is incredibly useless, unlike the rest of us. He's too good to break the law. The only time I ever tried to use him to distract people, he immediately started crying and gave up before I could get a single wallet.
Well, I'm sorry, but I happen to think stealing is wrong. I guess I was just born into the wrong family.
You're damn right you were. You are such a disappointment. I never thought that one of my own children could be such a complete loser.
Their words hurt even more than the physical abuse that they would throw my way. Sometimes it would just be a slap, but other times it was worse. Everyone in family other than me smoked, and they would put out their lit cigarettes on my arm. To this day, I have scars on my arms from all the burn marks from them. The older I got, the worse they would lash out at me as well. The occasional slapping turned into the occasional punch. It finally came to a head when my father came home one night and gave me an ultimatum.
Okay, enough is enough. Chad, you are either going to contribute to this family, or you will no longer be welcome in this house.
What do you mean, Dad?
I need a car, so you have two choices. You can either go out and steal one for me, or you can go out and live on the street and never return. If you return here without a car, then I'll kill you. Do you understand me?
I nodded, but I knew that there was no way that I could do as he was instructing me. I didn't know how to steal a car, let alone did I even want to, but living on the street. I was only 16 when he gave me this ultimatum, and the idea of living alone on the street made my heart race so much, I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. I walked out the front door knowing that there was no way that I could go through with it. I walked down the street and hid behind some bushes and waited until 9 a.m. the next day, when the rest of my family left the house to go somewhere. While they were gone, I snuck in and grabbed as much of my belongings and some camping gear that I could carry and left again before they got back. I really had no idea what to do, but I had the camping gear, and so I went out to a local forest and found a secluded spot and made a cozy campsite. In the morning, I went fishing and I was able to catch a few fish to eat, so I was at least not starving. I lived like that for a couple weeks when one day, I came back to camp after fishing and found a man sitting by my tent. He had noticed that I had been living in the woods for some time, and he asked if I needed help. At first, I was reluctant to admit the truth, but after a few minutes of talking, I told him my life story. As it turned out, he had grown up in a similar home, and he had escaped it and eventually became a park ranger. He was living in a cabin not far away, and there was an empty cabin next to his, and I could live there if I wanted. But the deal was that I would keep going to school. I couldn't believe my good luck, and so I accepted. From then on, Carl, the park ranger that helped me, would give me groceries once a week and some money to help me out, and although he would check up on me, he also gave me a lot of freedom. It was great. I was living in the woods still, and got to enjoy nature while also continuing my education. Eventually, I graduated high school, and with Carl's help, I applied to various schools for geology. I managed to get some scholarships and graduated at the top of my class. With my newfound knowledge of geology, I returned home to my cabin and spoke with Carl. He told me about some parcel of land far to the north that was being sold for a very low price, and he wondered if I could have a look at it. He was interested in making an investment and buying it, but wanted to know if it was worth doing so. And so I went and had a look, and sure enough, I knew that it would be a perfect place for a gold mine, and I told Carl as much. He ended up buying the parcel and hired me on as his partner and opened up a mine there. Within weeks, we were finding tons of gold and making more money than we knew what to do with. Carl ended up retiring from his job, and both of us built massive cabins along a lake that we loved. From that point on, we would scout other sites and continue to build our empire. Life was good, but of course my parents and siblings eventually found out that rather than dying on the streets that I had, instead made something of myself, and my father called me.
Hey there, bud. So I heard that you ended up becoming rich.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good for myself. What do you want?
Well, we're family. I would assume that you were going to share your wealth with the rest of us. Or are we going to have to come out to that pretty cabin of yours and just take what you owe us?
How do you know where I live?
Are you kidding me? We've known for a while. Listen, if you know what's good for you, then you'll just give us our share. Otherwise, we'll come over and beat it out of you.
If you come out here, then I'll make sure that you'll regret it. I knew that they were going to be idiots and try to break into my house, but I lived in the woods, and people were the least of my concerns. I had quite the security system along with animal traps surrounding my property. The next night, I heard a howl coming from the woods which sounded like someone crying out in pain. I grabbed my rifle and went to see who it was, and as I approached, I saw that my brother had stepped in a bear trap. The rest of my family had managed to free him, but his leg was all torn up. Without hesitation, I called the police and told them I had 4 people on my property that were trying to attack my home. Hey, I called the police and they'll be here soon. You can either try to flee or get arrested. It's your choice.
Are you threatening us?
You're damn right I am. You people are crazy and dangerous. I don't want you anywhere near me. The sounds of police sirens could suddenly be heard, and my family scattered into the woods as they tried to run away. My brother with his wounded leg barely got very far, and was caught first while the rest ran straight through an area that was covered in poison oak and ended up getting covered with it. My father was the worst. He tried to fight back against the police, and they were forced to tase him. After that night, my family was arrested and were charged with assault, since all 4 of them resisted arrest. They all ended up getting scars from the poison oak that they were covered with, since none of them received any kind of treatment for it until well after they were scratching themselves raw. My brother got it the worst though, and his leg became infected, and he ended up having to get it amputated, in order to ensure that my family faced as much punishment as possible. I went down to the police station and told them all about how my family had been breaking the law for years. With my testimony, the police were able to build a case against all 4 of my family members. The police had dozens of cases with no suspects, but, with my help, they were able to determine that my family were guilty of quite a bit. By the time they went to trial, each of them was looking at over 20 years behind bars because of all the different crimes that they had committed. Shortly after the trials, a news station contacted me about what had happened, and I told them my story, and they put it on the news nationwide, and it got so much attention that a movie studio wanted to turn my life story into a movie. As a result, I ended up selling the story of my life for a hefty sum of money, and when the movie came out, my family was roasted by people online. Everyone around the country knew just what kind of monsters my family were, and I knew that even when they eventually got out of prison, that they would be forced to leave the country or else be attacked and harassed by all the people that had seen the movie. For me, it was great. Not only had I escaped their terrible influence and toxicity, but now I also had a way of making sure that they would never bother me again. It was even better than a restraining order, although I did get one of those as well. So, in the end, I think things worked out pretty well for me and my family got what they deserved. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
Mom has gotten a richer man that takes care of me, and I love him. This is going to be the last time you'll be seeing me, so bye.
You heard the girl. One more thing, we sold the second house, so you better find somewhere else to start living if you get out of here. Goodbye, Theo.
I watched them leave with tears in my eyes. Just in time, the nurse came in. I probably would have died if she didn't come in to help me relax. I was heartbroken, hurt, and betrayed. It slowed down my recovery, and I had to pay more money. Hello there. My name's Theo, and I'm 55 years old. I'm currently living in Atlanta, happy with my new wife and stepson who assists in managing my company. 3 years ago, I got a divorce from my first wife. About 20 years ago, I met my first wife, Sasha. She was a lovely and very beautiful woman. Honestly, before anything, I fell in love with how beautiful she was. I'd first seen her at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, and she seemed so humble and friendly. After getting my treatment for a small fever, I left. But when I got home, I couldn't get her off my head. A week later, I found myself going back to the hospital. I was asked if I had an appointment, but I replied that I needed to have a conversation with a nurse. Luckily, they directed me to her office after I gave her description. She was quite surprised when I walked in. I was confident enough to tell her what she was making me feel. Although she seemed surprised at first, she gave me her number and accepted texts and calls. I left the hospital happily. The more we got to know each other, the more we knew how much we matched. I fell even more in love with her. A month later, I asked her to be my girlfriend. The feelings were mutual, so she agreed, and our journey began. By then, I already had my own company, so I was wealthy enough. I also had 2 houses of my own. Since I wasn't so young anymore, financially comfortable and sure about my feelings, I was ready to get married. I talked about it with Sasha. I was filled with happiness afterward, knowing she was ready too. The next month, I proposed to her, and she agreed. Life was going smoothly with us. However, after our marriage, Sasha told me she wanted to quit her job.
You're wealthy, honey. I feel ashamed to be working for peanuts when I have a wealthy husband. I'm going to quit my job.
It didn't quite make sense, but I agreed with her. I'd made up my mind to give her anything that would make her happy. Also, I was rich enough to sustain us. She quit her job, and I placed her on a monthly salary of $30,000, aside her allowance. Our marriage was going smoothly. Although Sasha was always requesting things, I never failed to provide them for her. Soon she got pregnant. I was the happiest man on earth. I danced so much, spun her around happily, and got her a car as a welcome gift the next day. However, her response was unexpected.
Why did you get me this? You should have gotten me the latest one, Theo. How can I drive this?
This was made last year, honey. The year has only just began, and the latest one isn't even in Atlanta yet.
You should have found it for me. I'm carrying your child, Theo. Your child.
I didn't know what to do. I had to beg her with more money before she finally forgave me and took the car. Throughout her pregnancy, she was requesting even more, and I tried my best to give all to her, as even a delay brought fights between us. I thought it was simply her pregnancy hormones. However, after the birth of our daughter, Ivy, Sasha continued, I worked even harder, as I couldn't afford to have her regular requests affecting my company. Our daughter was growing, but Sasha was spoiling her. I would stop her, but Sasha never let me. Once, when she was 10, she'd stolen money from my safe, and I'd caught her in the act. I tried to discipline her, but Sasha came in and yelled at me to stop. When I asked Ivy what she wanted to use the money for, she shocked me even more.
I want to give it to my boyfriend. Do you have a problem with your daughter taking your money, Dad? Are you truly as stingy as Mom says you are?
I couldn't believe my ears. Sasha had been telling my daughter I was stingy, despite me giving her everything. Angrily, I left the house and went to the company. At night, I went over to a hotel where I spent the night. I didn't return home until 3 days later. By then, my safe had been emptied. Well, Sasha knew the passcode. Anyway, I apologized to them just for peace. About 5 years later, I got diagnosed with cancer. According to the doctors, it had been in me for a long time, and I was at a critical stage. I had to be admitted and treatment started. I hadn't imagined to be there for a long time, but it happened. My health kept deteriorating, and I found myself spending insane amount of money on different treatment. 2 months later, I had to sell my second house. The treatment was so expensive that it had taken all of my savings. I couldn't use my company's money, so I was forced to sell my house. My wife and daughter visited me often and took care of me, but it started to change after I sold my house. They reduced their visits and barely even stayed for long when they came. One day, Sasha visited me at the hospital and gave me my biggest shock.
Kate's husband just got her a new house. I want one too.
Are you being serious right now? Sasha, I'm on the hospital bed. I have no money. Do you think I'd sell my house if I had any money? Kate's husband isn't sick with cancer. Hope you know that?
Oh, wow. Well, I didn't bring cancer on you. Honestly, Theo, you're beginning to fail as a husband and father. You can barely provide for us anymore. I don't think I can last with you anymore.
Before I could speak, she grabbed her bag and stormed out. I couldn't understand what she meant. Anyway, after then, she didn't visit until 3 weeks later. During those weeks when she was away, a nurse took good care of me. I couldn't be more grateful to her. When Sasha finally returned, she came with Ivy. I was elated. My anger melted off when I saw them. However, my heart was shattered with what I was told.
Mom has gotten a richer man that takes care of me, and I love him. This is going to be the last time you'll be seeing me, so bye.
You heard the girl. One more thing, we sold the second house, so you better find somewhere else to start living if you get out of here. Goodbye, Theo.
I watched them leave with tears in my eyes. Just in time, the nurse came in. I probably would have died if she didn't come in to help me relax. I was heartbroken, hurt, and betrayed. It slowed down my recovery, and I had to pay more money. However, fortunately, and through the constant reassurance and help from the nurse, I was able to recover. I spent 6 months in the hospital before I finally got discharged. I had no house anymore, and my company was failing. The nurse, Britney, asked me to lean on her again. She brought me to her house. I discovered that she had a son who just graduated from college with a business major. I was amazed. He was just as nice as his mother. He offered to assist me in getting my company back up, and I agreed. Together, we started. Meanwhile, I got to know that Sasha was with another businessman. He used to be less richer than me, but because of my health issues, he'd surpassed me. I didn't mind. I cleared thoughts of them off my mind. I was going to grow my company and start my life at fresh. While Britney's son and I worked, I began to develop feelings toward Britney. Fortunately, the feelings were mutual. I was scared to start another relationship, but she helped me through my fear and assured to be better than Sasha. My company was also getting better. After another 6 months, I was able to get a house. It wasn't as huge as my previous ones, but I didn't mind. I left Britney's houses, but we'd already began a relationship and were happy together. A year later, my company had grown even bigger than it used to be. Britney's son was incredibly smart and intelligent. He was also mature and supportive about my relationship with his mother. I hadn't heard much from Sasha and Ivy, but I didn't care. My life was complete with Britney and my stepson. I got a bigger house and gave the previous one to Britney's son. His gratitude warmed my heart. Ivy had never thanked me like that, even though I did better things for her. I loved him just how I loved his mother. After I got my second house, I began contemplating marriage with Britney. I discussed it with her son, and his response, again, warmed my heart. I'm aware of how much you love and cherish her. You're also a good man. I'd be glad if you both get married. I was impressed. However, before I could push through with the proposal, news about Ivy and Sasha filled the news. Apparently, the man they left me for was a chronic abuser and drug dealer. He'd beat up Sasha so badly after a fight that she nearly lost her right eye. For Ivy, he'd given her a drug overdose that her insides had been destroyed and was in a coma after being taken to the hospital by the cops. I ignored the news and focused more on my life with Britney and her son. However, one day, we suddenly received an unwanted visitor. It was Sasha. She was on her knees, crying heavily. Her eye was still bandaged, and there were bruises all over her body.
Yo, please, honey. Ivy's gonna die if she doesn't get treatment. The hospital has stopped treating her. They won't continue if we don't pay. I'm begging you, Theo. Help your daughter, please.
I'd already prepared a divorce paper because I wanted to divorce her before marrying Britney. I walked back in and grabbed the document. I won't help if you don't sign this. She was desperate, so she signed it without checking. Once she did, I burst into laughter. I have no help to give you. The day you both left my life, I canceled you. Now, before I call the cops, leave my house. She grabbed my legs, begging me. I called out to my guards and they chased her away with dogs out of my house. I told Britney about it and she told me to forget what they did and help them. It took a few days before I finally agreed. However, the day I planned to go to the hospital, I got a call from the police. They'd caught some men trying to kidnap Britney's son and had taken them to the station. There, they confessed that Sasha had hired them and told them to request a huge amount of money from me as ransom. They were going to share the money afterward and also kill the boy. I was shocked. Sasha hadn't been caught, but the cops were after her. We were all scared, as we didn't know what she could do next. However, luckily, she was caught by the cops. She had to be shot in the leg to stop her from escaping. She was taken to court, alongside the kidnappers, where they were all found guilty of kidnapping and attempted murder. She got 30 years imprisonment, while the guys got 40 each, after being found guilty of other crimes. We were finally relaxed. Well, Ivy died in the hospital. Britney begged me to, at least, give her a funeral. I agreed, only because of Britney. Once all was done, I proposed to Britney, and she agreed. We got married a few months later and relocated to Atlanta afterward. My stepson didn't come with us, as he was in charge of my company. Britney and I have started a fashion house in Atlanta, and we're making impressive progress with it. I'm happy with her and my stepson, and I wouldn't have wished for different people. Meanwhile, Sasha's leg injury from the gunshot got worse, and the leg began to decay. It has to be amputated, and she was left to limp without a wheelchair, while she continued serving her jail term. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. Hey there. So listen, I'm going to be honest with you and just say up front that I am not someone that you really want to know. I have a story that I want to tell you, but I'll just let you know from the start that I'm one of the villains. But maybe you'll understand why I did what I did, and while you may not approve of my actions, at the very least, you might understand my motivations. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here. Let me start off by saying my name is Clyde. Well, actually, that isn't my real name, but someone like me doesn't exactly go around giving out their real name to just everyone. I live in a small apartment building that has 4 units. Across the hall from me is a woman named Beth. Below me is the owner of the building, Tom, and across from him is Jennifer. Both Beth and Jennifer are roughly the same age as me, and if I wasn't a scumbag, I would happily ask them out. Both of them are simply gorgeous, but are as straight-laced as they come. Truly good people, and honestly, I can respect them for that. I mean, I live a life that tends to break the law, but I respect those people that can make a go of things without doing so. And Beth and Jennifer are just such people. However, our landlord Tom isn't. He isn't a criminal like me, but he isn't a good person either. Hey, Beth, Jennifer, both of you are late on your rent.
No, we're not. We're paid up in full.
Trust me, you are. but if you want to think of alternative ways to pay the rent, I'm sure we can come to an agreement.
Holy crap, Tom. Why do you always have to be so pervy? And no, we know for a fact that we have already paid. Why do you always do things like this?
I hated Tom. Beth and Jennifer were really nice people, and they didn't deserve to be treated like that. Tom was such a pervert and would make all kinds of nasty remarks. It really did bother me, but so long as he didn't act inappropriately. Well, any more inappropriate than he already was at least, then I didn't see a need to step in and do something to him, but I always kept an eye on him. More than once, I stumbled into the lobby and saw him casually glancing through Beth and Jennifer's mail. He never took anything or opened any letters, but it made me very suspicious of him. Then one day, I was in need of some money, and I knew that Tom was collecting rent from the rental properties that he owned. He owned 4 other buildings like the one we lived in, and he kept the rent money that he got from them at his place and deposited it in the bank the day after he collected it all. I knew this because I had followed him to the bank a few times after the first of the month and saw him deposit a large amount of money into his account. Money that I could really use. I owed a few $1,000s to an associate of mine in exchange for some drugs that I was going to resell and make a sizable profit. But I needed some extra cash, and knowing that Tom had it, I made the choice to sneak down to his place and take just what I needed. I snuck downstairs and made sure he wasn't home before I picked the lock and let myself inside. After a few minutes, I found where Tom hid the money and helped myself to just what I needed. He had it all in an unlocked safe hidden under his bed, along with a box of videotapes that were labeled after Beth and Jennifer. I thought it was rather odd, and so I took a couple of them as well, and then snuck back up to my own apartment, making sure to not leave any trace that I had been there. Once I was back in my apartment, I hid the money and then got ready to see what was on the tapes. As soon as I hit play on my TV, I was blown away with what I saw. It was a recording from inside Beth's apartment. Her bathroom, to be exact, and the tape showed her taking a shower. As soon as I realized what I was watching, I turned it off. Sure enough, when I checked the other tapes, I saw that they were the same thing. Sometimes it showed a camera in their bathrooms, and sometimes it was in their bedrooms or kitchens. It seemed that Tom had put cameras in a bunch of different places in the girls' apartments. Judging by the angles of the cameras, I assumed that they were in the ceiling lights and getting a bit paranoid. I checked the lights in my apartment and was relieved to see that there weren't any cameras in them, which meant that Tom only spied on the women in my building. Although judging by the amount of tapes that were under the bed, I had to assume that either he had been filming the girls for a long time or that our building wasn't the only one he had cameras in. I was incredibly angry. I had always suspected that Tom was a complete sleazeball, but I had no idea just how nasty he was. An idea suddenly came to me though. If it worked out, then I would be able to not only get rid of Tom, but also make sure that he faced justice as well. I called up Beth and Jennifer and invited them over to my apartment. They were reluctant at first, but they eventually agreed to come over. I put the tapes on and left the room out of respect, and when I was sure the tape was done, I went back in the room to find both Beth and Jennifer incredibly embarrassed, but also furious as well.
How did you get these tapes? Why would you show us them?
I won't say how, but I took them from Tom's apartment. Listen, that pervert has tapes like these from all of his buildings. I don't know about you guys, but I love living here. It's a really nice building. But so long as Tom owns it, it's not a safe place to live.
But what can we do? It's not like he is going to sell it anytime soon.
I have a plan for that. All I ask is when the time comes that you back me up, no matter what. They reluctantly agreed. To be honest, I wasn't sure why they trusted me, but I think the respectful way I showed them the videos helped. And so I waited until it was time for Tom to collect the next month's rent, and while he was out of his apartment, I snuck into, and I stashed the drugs I had bought with the money I had stolen from him among the tapes that he had hidden under his bed and on the kitchen counter as well. And then I went outside and waited in my car. Once I saw Tom pull up, I waited until he got out of his car and was several feet away from it. And then I drove my car into his, with enough speed to cause some serious damage. When I got out, Tom ran towards me to confront me. "What on earth are you doing? You idiot, you totaled my car." "I did? Well, maybe you shouldn't have parked illegally." "I wasn't parked illegally. I was in my designated spot and you just wrecked it. Are you drunk or high or something?" "Of course not. But then again, I turned you down and didn't buy drugs from you.
What are you talking about?
That's it. I'm calling the police. That was of course what I wanted, but Tom wasn't in the right frame of mind for what I had planned. It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. That was when the police showed up, and once they had calmed Tom down, Beth, Jennifer, and I went outside to speak with them. The officers split us up, and while the one that got the girls and my side of the story, the other officer went and spoke with Tom. I told the officer that I accidentally ran into Tom's car, and he blew a gasket and even threw a rock at me, but thankfully missed and hit his own car. Both Beth and Jennifer confirmed that this was the truth. I then told the officer that Tom had already been upset with me because he had tried to sell me drugs, but I had refused to buy any. Between my story, the bruises that were on me and the girls backing me up, the officer became suspicious and left to check Tom's apartment. When she came back, she threw cuffs onto Tom and then threw him in the back of her squad car. I assumed that she had found the drugs and the videotapes, and while she hadn't watched them, she surmised that they weren't anything good. With Tom arrested, we went back inside and celebrated in my apartment. The girls were confused about what happened, but were glad that Tom wasn't in the building. Sure enough, more police came the next day and cleared out Tom's apartment, finding more and more evidence as they did. For a few weeks, we didn't hear anything, but then a news reporter got a hold of the story and announced that Tom was looking at going to prison for the rest of his life. The drugs charges against him, which was a frame job, I know, was the least of his concerns. After the police reviewed the many tapes, they found that Tom had indeed placed cameras not only in his tenants' apartments, but also all over the city. To make matters worse, he had made a website where he was selling compromising photos and videos of hundreds of different women and had been doing it for years. The man was quite wealthy and had used that ill-gotten wealth to buy all of his apartment buildings. Because of this fact, the police seized all of his assets, which included the buildings and all of his money. Soon after, the police held an auction and sold the buildings at a reduced price out to the public, and seeing an opportunity, I bought our building with some ill-gotten money of my own. My first act as the new landlord was to reduce Beth and Jennifer's rent by half. After all, I had paid peanuts for the building, and I really didn't need to charge them a lot to make money. I then rented out Tom's old apartment to an old couple on a fixed income. To be honest, they pay less than Beth and Jennifer, but I think the ladies would be okay with that. So now I get to live rent-free in a building that I own. Of course, I use the building to help hide where I actually get my real income from, but like I said, I'm not the hero of the story. I just sometimes do the right thing, but usually in the most wrong way possible. But now that I have a house that I get rent from, maybe it's time to stop what I actually do. What do you think? Quiet as a mouse, I snuck up behind them and hit them both as hard as I could in the knees, disabling them from being able to run away, and then called the police and reported them. Within minutes, the police came and threw the pair into the back of their squad car and hauled them off to jail. So I want to start off by saying that I'm a very forgiving person, but everyone has their limits. And I want you to tell me if I went a bit too far in the end. To start off with, my name is Brad, and I met my wife Kathy many years ago. We were the kind of couple that constantly had to hold hands and truly did love each other. We had 2 sons soon after we were married, and we were over the moon with how blessed we were. The only problem was that Kathy's family despised me. I knew that the only reason that they hated me was because I'm black. Unfortunately, although Kathy was very progressive, her family was incredibly racist and would often say cruel things to me. Our children, though, took after my wife and had very, very light skin. So much so that they merely looked like they were very tanned. I can recall my mother-in-law approaching my wife soon after my youngest son was born.
Oh, Kathy, why on earth are you married to that monkey? Thankfully, both of the children he gave you look like us, but what happens if you have a black baby next time? What will people think?
I can't believe how ignorant you are, Mom. If people think that my children are ugly because of the color of their skin, then those people can go to hell. I suggest that you grow up, or else I'll make sure that you never see your grandchildren again.
I felt so much pride for my wife in that moment, and a great deal of disgust for my mother-in-law. My children were beautiful, regardless of what color their skin was. To me, this didn't matter at all, as I loved them regardless. But this made my in-laws overlook their heritage a bit. Honestly, it was a mixed blessing since I wanted them to know their extended family. Even if they were toxic racist people, family was always important to me. However, the worst thing that could ever happen did, and I lost my wife to an illness. When we had found out that she was sick and that she wouldn't recover, we made plans for everything so that when the time came, that it was all prepared. I knew that I would be a complete wreck when she passed away, and that I would need things planned out ahead of time, or else nothing would get done. When the day finally came, my sons and I were devastated, but thanks to planning things out, we managed to make it through the funeral more or less whole and complete. Thanks to my wife's life insurance policy, everything was paid for, and my sons' financial futures were secure no matter what they would want to do. The one saving grace was that Kathy's family was on their best behavior, and for the first time since I've known them, they treated me with respect. I had honestly thought that they had changed, and was angry that it took the death of my wife for them to finally change for the better. But it didn't last very long. A week after we had buried my wife, my in-laws and I gathered at my lawyer's office to hear the reading of her will. I already knew what was going to be said, and so it was no surprise when the lawyer announced that all of Kathy's life insurance money would go towards our boys. We had talked long about that decision, and since I made more than enough money at my job, I saw no point in the money being given to me. After all, it would help to ensure that our sons would not only be able to pay for their education, but it would give them a solid boost when it came to starting their lives after they finished school as well. It was Kathy's final gift to our sons. However, this was a bit of a shock to my in-laws.
Are you serious? Do you mean to tell me that all that money is just going to this degenerate? No, sir. Their joint finances are going to be kept by Brad, but the life insurance money will go to their sons. It will be held in trust by myself until they are 18, at which time it will be given to them in installments over the course of a few years. The only money that Brad is getting was already his to begin with.
But what about the custody of the boys?
Well, they will remain under the care of their father. I'm confused. Why would there be any question of what would happen to them?
They can't be raised by this man. They'll end up in a gang or selling drugs. That's all his kind are good for.
I knew that I shouldn't be surprised, but I was taken aback by their words, especially since they thought that just because my wife had died, that my own sons wouldn't remain mine. The lawyer immediately kicked them out of the meeting and apologized to me, even though he had done nothing wrong, and I hoped that that was the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, 3 police officers showed up at my house, and they looked as though they were going to break in.
Are you Brad Cooper?
Yes, I am. Is everything okay?
We have reports that you're abusing your sons and forcing them to take drugs.
I'm sorry, but what? No, sir. I would never do that. I love my sons.
May we come in and have a word with them?
Yes, of course. Please come with me. You can ask them whatever you need to. I led them into my home and they interviewed the boys for hours. Afterwards, they apologized as they had been led to believe that I had been a violent man and that I had been hurting the boys, which couldn't be further from the truth. I then asked who had filed the report against me, and they said that it had been anonymous. Although I knew all too well who it had probably been, my in-laws had no doubt had a hand in this nonsense. A week later, the police were back. This time, they apologized for the inconvenience, but they had received another anonymous tip about me abusing my sons, and they needed to follow up on it for their report. I knew that they were only doing their jobs, and so I let them in again. And just as before, they were satisfied that it had been a false claim. Angrily, I asked how many times they would keep hearing these false claims before they began to investigate who was making them. My sons don't understand why they keep having to answer these questions. They're worried that they will say the wrong thing and that you'll take them away to prison. Can't you do something about these false allegations? I can assure you that it's my in-laws that are making them. They want custody of my sons for some reason.
Rest assured, sir,
that we are indeed investigating who made them, and once we do, they will face justice. I wanted to believe him, but I was convinced, and so I reached out to my former brother-in-law, Derek. Aside from my wife, he was the only other person on my wife's side of the family that was a good person and wasn't racist. We had always gotten along very well. Derek, they are tormenting my kids with all these false allegations. Can you confirm that they are the ones making the calls? I wish I could help you, but I don't know for sure if it was them or not. However, I do know that they are really pissed off that your boys haven't been taken away from you. I did overhear that they would be taking matters into their own hands tonight. I don't know what that means, but if I were you, I would keep an eye out for them. And if you need anything, just let me know. Thank you for the heads up, Derek. I appreciate it. Knowing my in-laws, there was no telling what they might do, and so I grabbed a baseball bat and kept it in my bedroom just in case. Sure enough, that night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps downstairs. As quietly as I could, I grabbed my bat and crept to my son's room and saw that they were asleep in their beds. As soon as I saw that they were safe, I knew who had probably made the noise, and I then crept downstairs and found my in-laws skulking around. Quiet as a mouse, I snuck up behind them and hit them both as hard as I could in the knees, disabling them from being able to run away, and then called the police and reported them. Within minutes, the police came and threw the pair into the back of their squad car and hauled them off to jail. After their interrogation at the police station, I learned they had come to attack and kill me and kidnap my sons. They figured that they could eventually manipulate my sons into giving them their inheritance, and that once they had them, that with me being dead, that the rest of my wife and my belongings would go to our sons and therefore to them. It was so absurd and so stupid that they actually thought that the plan would work. The judge hearing their case was disgusted by their actions, and combined with the fact that the police had proven that they did indeed make the false allegations about my abusing my sons, the judge had no choice but to throw the book at them and sentence them to 20 years in prison each. Part of me felt bad that my sons would have to live with the knowledge that their own grandparents had tried to kill their father and kidnap them, but they deserved to know the truth, no matter how unpleasant it was. Between the loss of their mother and their grandparents' evil and terrible acts, we all needed years of therapy. But I'm happy to say that it has proven to be a blessing for us, as our relationship has never been stronger. And seeing them now, as both of them are nearing the end of their college careers, I can happily say that I am extremely proud of the men that they are becoming, and I know that my wife would be too. So, there you have it. Again, I'm usually a very forgiving man, but after what my in-laws tried to pull, surely you agree that I did the right thing. What do you think? If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
Some families have odd or even dark secrets. Mine has a bit of both, although I never really knew this until I was much older. I know that I shouldn't be surprised though, as people tend to not tell children much, as they don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. It was like that for my brother Jacob and I. Even though we were very close in age, we definitely were treated very differently. Our father treated us the same, but our mother and grandparents never did. Oh, my name is Jeremy, by the way, and I was born first. For the first few years, things were great, or at least I remember it that way. But then one day, Jacob was born, and not long afterwards, our grandparents moved in with us. After that, things changed drastically. It was little things at first. My mother used to play with me all the time, but suddenly she was always too busy. Hello, Mama, do you want to play tag with me? Please?
Why would I want to?
But you never want to play with me anymore. Ever since Jacob was born, you don't care about me.
Of course I don't. Why would I?
It really hurt to hear things like that, and sadly she wasn't the only one to be mean to me. Until they moved in, I hadn't known my grandparents, and I wish that that had never changed, as they were even worse than my mother. They were very cruel. Hello, grandmother and grandfather.
Oh, it's you. What are you still doing here? If you were my child, I would have given you up for adoption years ago. Such an ugly and stupid child.
At first, I thought that maybe my grandparents and mother were just mean and cruel to everyone, but they always treated Jacob like he could do no wrong, like he was a saint. If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
I'm sorry, Mama.
Oh, it's okay. You didn't mean to. Are you okay, though?
Well, it scared me. But yeah, I'm okay.
That's okay. Let's get you a new toy. That will help you to feel better.
Sadly, they were also just as cruel to my father as well. I couldn't understand why they were such terrible people. The older I got, the worse they behaved. When I turned 15, they forced me to get a job and then forced me to give them my paychecks. It was so annoying, and they justified it by saying that I owed them for all the food and clothes that I had used over the years. It was either that or they would demand that I start to pay rent. They did, however, give me a small amount back as an allowance. It was so insulting, but there wasn't anything that I could do about it. Or at least that's what I thought. I remember one time when I came home from work and my paycheck was smaller than usual, and my grandfather became angry with me because of it. I had been sick for a few days and had to miss both school and work as a result, which meant my check had fewer hours on it. My grandfather didn't care, though.
What is the meaning of this? Are you trying to steal from us? Why is this smaller than usual?
I'm sorry, grandfather, but I missed some shifts because I was sick, so I got paid for fewer hours.
That's not my problem. Why are you so weak that you can't work just because of a little cold? Do you expect that the bank will give us a break on the mortgage just because you had the sniffles?
He then threatened to never let it happen again, and then he punched me and gave me a black eye. The next day, I went into work, and my coworker asked how I had gotten the black eye, and I was so tired of lying about such injuries that I told him in confidence how I had gotten it.
Buddy, that's insane. You need to report them to the police. No one should have to go through that kind of torment.
I can't. If I do, then my family will be split apart. I would rather just put up with it until I'm 18 and then leave.
But what about your dad? Do you really think it's fair that you should leave and let him continue to suffer? Isn't he getting abused too?
He had a point, actually. My grandparents and mother did tend to hit him from time to time as well. I knew then that I had to do something, but it took me a bit before I came up with an actual plan. A week later, though, it struck me. I just needed to build an airtight case about all the abuse that they were heaping on us, and so I began recording every time they yelled at either of us, or they hit or slapped one of us. Sadly, it didn't take all that long before I had dozens of videos and pictures of the abuse. I didn't want to surprise my father, so I approached him with what I had and asked him to make sure he was on board with taking my evidence to the police. This is most of what I have. It should be enough to put them in prison, or at the very least, to get them out of the house and away from us.
Yes, I agree. And I'm sorry that I didn't do anything over all these years. I was just afraid that if I had, that your mother would have sent you away.
I don't get it, though. Why has Mom and her parents always been so cruel to me and you, and not to Jacob?
Well, you're old enough to know the truth. You see, both Jacob and you are my sons, but you have different mothers. I dated a woman just before, and she became pregnant without my knowing it. We broke up, and a year after you were born, she came to me and told me that she couldn't afford to keep you. And so even though it would put a strain on our marriage, your mother and I agreed to take you in and raise you. After Jacob was born, your grandparents found out about this, and they hated you since you weren't truly family in their minds.
And what about my real mom?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in many years, but at any rate, you've done an amazing job. We need to take this to the police right away and press charges against the three of them.
And so we did just that. It took a bit of convincing, as the officers found it hard to believe that a man was allowing himself and his son to be abused by his wife and in-laws. But with the mountain of evidence that I had gathered, they began to come around. There was so much evidence, in fact, that they immediately went and arrested my mother and grandparents. It was such a relief to finally have them out of the house. But then the trials began, and at first things seemed rather bleak. My grandparents' lawyer made the case that they were old and senile and hadn't understood that what they were doing was wrong, and so they got off with just a warning and were released into my father's custody. As for my mother, though, her lawyer didn't have the same success, and although he tried to justify her behavior, her judge wasn't having any of it, and he sentenced her to 10 years in prison. On top of that, my father's lawyer filed for divorce and stated that she had breached the conditions of their prenuptial agreement. She had abused both my father and I, and as such, she wasn't entitled to either the house or the children, and my father was awarded both in the divorce. Unfortunately, he couldn't go after her for alimony though, because she was heading to prison, and he had always been the breadwinner in the family. But he was happy enough to have her gone and out of his life. When it came to her parents though, he had no love for them at all, and he placed them in one of the worst old age homes we had in the city. I know for a fact that they hate it there. It doesn't help that they are terrible people, and that they constantly argue and fight with the employees though. Even though it isn't a high-class place, their constant bickering with the staff only makes it worse for them. That did Jacob with us, and he wasn't very pleased with the new power structure in the family. Knowing this, my father sent him away to military school. It pained him to do so, but he knew that Jacob needed some tough love to realize that things needed to change, and that his mother and grandparents had spoiled and ruined him. I'm happy to say that after years of military school, Jacob came back a changed man, and we have both even grown to become not only great brothers to one another, but also best of friends as well. He's even going to be my best man at my wedding next year. And if that wasn't enough good news. Soon after all the trials were wrapped up, my father hired a private investigator to find my real mom. And he did. It turns out that she still lived close by and had wanted to reach out for years, but had been worried that doing so could split our family up. With my evil mother and grandparents out of the way, I was finally able to get to know my real mother. It does feel weird to have such a strange and mixed family, but since Jacob's mother and our grandparents were taken out of the picture, things have only gotten better and better. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
However, I thought about it. Violet and my parents have always been bad to me. I truly needed to let them get a taste of their own medicine. Just as I tried to leave the house, I found the cops at the door. They were looking for Violet. Without thinking, I took them to my aunt's place where my parents and Violet were found. Immediately, she was arrested. My family rained curses on me and called a jealous, good-for-nothing child.
I regret not asking your mother to abort you.
I was hurt by their words, but I didn't mind. Violet was arrested, and that's all that mattered. The stabbed girl fortunately didn't die, but her parents weren't going to let things slide. They pressed charges against my sister for attempted murder. My family members raged. Everyone blamed me. In anger, my parents kicked me out and vowed to kill me if they ever saw me again. Hi there. I'm Samantha Gary, aged 24 and preparing for my marriage to Henry, a man I've been with for over 6 years. We met during the time I was struggling, after getting kicked out by my family. You're wondering the reason I was kicked out, aren't you? Even more, at such a young age of 18. Well, I was born 2 years after my elder sister, Violet. You could say we were very different from each other. While Violet took our mom's ethereal beauty, I took my father's average looks. That kind of gave my sister an upper hand, as everyone preferred her to me. Our mom saw her as her mini-self, so she mostly tried to make them look the same. Whenever we were attending a party, she would dress Violet in the same dress as her. They would wear the same pair of shoes and even bags, while I just wore regular clothes. Our extended families were even worse. My mother's family absolutely adored Violet. According to my grandparents, she reminded them of when my mother was a little child. Of course, they treated her differently from how I was treated. You would think, because I looked like my dad, he and his family members would treat me specially, the same way my mom and her family did to Violet. But that didn't happen. My dad was equally as obsessed with Violet as my mother. Whenever he shopped for us, he would often get her more colorful and feminine dresses, while he bought me whatever. His family was no different. Just because I looked like my father didn't make me any less girly, but it seemed as though they were ignoring that. While they taught Violet how to knit and all, they'd ask me to go play with my male cousins. Because of how frequently they got me blue and black things, I began to hate those colors. I was tired of seeing them. I loved pink too, just like Violet. I loved to have my hair packed in a ponytail with pink or other colorful hair ties. I didn't like how my mom always made them cut my hair to chin length, while Violet's grew past her shoulders. We soon began our college education. Since Violet was only 2 years older and didn't start going to school early, she was higher than me by just a class. When we got into high school, Violet became an entirely different person. At school, she was wild. She was growing to be even more beautiful, and it was getting into her head. She was considered the most pretty girl in the school. Everyone wanted to be friends with her, disregarding the fact that she already chose her own squad. Surprisingly, the school authorities also seemed to favor my sister over others. Her uniform fitted her the most. Every time I looked at her in the miniskirt and shirt that looked like it had been specially sewn for her, I wondered if they'd intentionally given me the ugly uniform I had. My skirt went past my knees and my shirt was so big and ugly. My family had mocked me the day we were both given our uniforms. However, despite how ugly they'd said I looked, I found students wanting to be friends with me. They'd often come to me and ask to be friends, but I always refused and told them I needed no friends. However, truthfully, I did. I craved to have friends like my sister did. But I felt they all came to me because they knew we were sisters. Perhaps they were just looking for an easier way to get closer to her. I didn't want to be used as a path and be abandoned later on when they'd gotten to their final destination, so I refused. One thing I knew I was better than my sister at was academics. I was way smarter than her. She was the perfect definition of beauty without brains, as she was always struggling to be in the top 10, while I barely came second. I was always topping the class, but my parents didn't seem to care about that. Whether my sister was intelligent enough, all they cared about was making her look beautiful and get people's attention. In our second year in high school, the school decided to have a party. I was 15 then, and Violet was 17. Luckily, I was among those allowed to attend, since it was a party for those over 14 years of age. Violet refused my parents' shopping for what she would wear and asked that she be given the money instead. Without arguing, they gave her enough money to shop. Seeing that, I also told them I wanted to shop for myself, but they refused.
Don't compare yourself to your sister who's more mature and fashion-inclined than you.
If you're insisting to shop for yourself, then we're going to give you only half of what we gave your sister.
I wasn't pleased, but I also didn't want to wear any blue ugly dress they planned to buy for me. So I agreed to receive only half. I believed I'd find a way to make it worth it. They gave it to me, and I went to a boutique I'd been wishing to shop at. When I got in, I met a beautiful lady at the front desk and greeted her politely. She asked what I need, and I was quiet for a moment. I needed to buy beautiful clothes to look pretty too, but I didn't know how to explain it to her. So I decided to tell her everything my parents have been doing to my sister and I. I was only given this amount, but I hope it's enough to get me clothes that would make me look pretty.
Oh, lovely. I was once a victim of favoritism too. I'm glad to be in this position. Come with me. They're all going to be mesmerized when they see you.
She took me to a beautiful section of the boutique and had me try on different beautiful and glittering dresses. Eventually, I settled for a pink ball gown that had sparkling stones attached to it. I looked just like a princess in it. She also got me matching silver shoes and a small pink bag. I was elated, but also scared. They're beautiful, but I don't think my money would be enough to pay for it.
Oh no, darling. That money is going to be used to buy the ugly dress your parents expect you to buy.
She gave me an ugly-looking black and blue dress and packaged it in a bag. She gave me the other dress, shoes, and bag without collecting a dime, and advised me to hide it from my parents. And I did. I returned home when neither of them was around and hid the dress in a place where I knew they'd never check. When they returned home and we showed them the clothes we got, they mocked mine. Violet's clothes were pretty, but I was happy that they weren't as elegant as mine. On the day of the party, I wore the ugly one and took the pretty one to the ladies' boutique. She allowed me to change there and even helped me with a soft touch of makeup. At the party, everyone's attention was on me. I could see Violet's anger when everyone ignored her and praised me for being so beautiful. After the party, we headed home and my parents were shocked. In anger, my mom took the clothes and shredded it to pieces, yelling and cussing at me for trying to compete with her daughter. I felt bad, but I let it slide and simply went to my room to sleep it away. The next day at school, more people asked to be friends with me, but I refused all. I didn't want that much attention. Years flew by and I clocked 18. We were done with high school. Violet was in college already while I was preparing for my entrance exams. One day, Violet returned home looking disoriented and scared. Her whole body was trembling and she had bloodstains on her hands and clothes. My parents, concerned and scared, asked to know what happened after managing to keep her calm. It was then that she revealed the shocking news. While having a fight with a girl because she insinuated Violet wasn't beautiful, she'd accidentally stabbed her in the stomach with a pen. She absconded, leaving the girl bleeding, and didn't know if the girl was dead. My parents were shocked and thrown into a state of panic. They paced about, wondering what to do.
You have to hide. I'll take you to Jessica's house and explain this to her. Until we figure this out, you mustn't leave there.
I was shocked. How could it treat a serious case like that so delicately and not even tell Violet that she was wrong? Are you not going to tell her she's wrong? They eyed me maliciously and dared me to say a word about it to anyone. Together, they left the house with Violet, and straight to my father's sister, Jessica, who seemed to cherish Violet even more than my parents. I headed to the boutique lady. Over the years, we'd become close, and I confided in her a lot. I told her about what happened.
Go to the police and tell them. This is your only chance to get revenge and teach those parents of yours a lesson.
I did oppose and returned home. However, I thought about it. Violet and my parents have always been bad to me. I truly needed to let them get a taste of their own medicine. Just as I tried to leave the house, I found the cops at the door. They were looking for Violet. Without thinking, I took them to my aunt's place where my parents and Violet were found. Immediately, she was arrested. My family rained curses on me and called a jealous, good-for-nothing child.
I regret not asking your mother to abort you.
I was hurt by their words, but I didn't mind. Violet was arrested, and that's all that mattered. The stabbed girl fortunately didn't die, but her parents weren't going to let things slide. They pressed charges against my sister for attempted murder. My family members raged. Everyone blamed me. In anger, my parents kicked me out and vowed to kill me if they ever saw me again. I went to the boutique lady and she gladly took me in. I got to hear that my parents and aunt were also arrested for trying to hide a criminal. While my parents and aunt were given 1-year jail term each, Violet got 18 years. It had taken a lot of money and treatments to save the girl. It was even discovered that Violet had broken her back after stepping on her back several times, which led the girl to being confined to a wheelchair, possibly for the rest of her life. I worked with the boutique lady and she helped me through my college education. She was like a mother to me and helped me gain back my self-esteem, which my family had killed. We relocated to Italy after she got a job there, and I transferred to one of the best colleges there. It was in my 3rd year that I met Henry, my soon-to-be husband. Last I heard from my parents, they weren't doing so well after losing their daughters. They did try to reach me once, but I pretended to not know them, and even threatened to report them to the police if they ever tried to speak to me again. Heard my mom is miserable after my dad had stroke, and she is the one taking care of him with no support from anyone. They are both so lonely, serves them right. Of course, the boutique lady, who I now address as Mom, is going to stand in as my mother on my wedding day. I also plan to give my first child her name, but she doesn't know that yet. It's going to be a surprise, and I can't wait to see her reaction. Thanks for watching. Please subscribing is $0.